Before the rise of empires, before the pyramids were built, before the ancient kings of Egypt ruled the Nile, there existed a story that many people today have never heard. It is a story hidden deep within ancient texts, a story about angels who descended from heaven, giants who once walked the earth, a cataclysmic flood that reshaped the world, and a mysterious prophet who was taken into heaven without ever experiencing death. His name was Enoch. The Bible mentions him only briefly. In the book of Genesis, chapter 5, we read a short but mysterious statement. Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more, because God took him. For centuries, this single verse puzzled scholars and believers alike. Who was Enoch? Why did he not die like every other human being? And where exactly was he taken? Ancient traditions preserved answers to these questions in a text known as the Book of Enoch. But unlike the books found in most modern Bibles, this ancient work was removed from the biblical canon centuries ago. Why? That question has fascinated historians, theologians, and researchers for generations. To understand the mystery, we must travel back thousands of years into the ancient world. According to tradition, Enoch lived before the Great Flood, during a time when humanity was still young. Civilizations were just beginning to form. Small communities of farmers and shepherds spread across the fertile valleys of the ancient Near East. People lived simple lives. They cultivated crops, raised animals, and looked up at the night sky with wonder. But unknown to them, powerful beings were watching from above. These beings were known as the Watchers. The Watchers were angels assigned with a special mission. Their role was to observe humanity, to guide the development of civilization, and to ensure that the divine order of creation remained intact. For a time, everything remained as it should, but eventually something began to change. As the Watchers observed humanity, they became fascinated by the daughters of men. Human women possessed beauty and vitality like nothing the angels had seen. What began as curiosity slowly turned to desire, and desire eventually turned to rebellion. According to the Book of Enoch, 200 angels made a decision that would change the destiny of the entire world. They would descend to earth. They would take human women as their wives, and they would reveal heavenly knowledge that humanity was never meant to possess. Their leader was a powerful angel named Semjaza. Before descending to earth, these angels gathered together on the summit of a mountain known as Mount Hermon. The winds howled across the frozen peaks as the angels stood beneath the stars. They knew the risk. They knew the punishment that awaited them if they defied the laws of heaven. Yet their desire was too strong. So they made a pact, an oath binding them together. If one fell, they would all fall together. With that oath sealed, the Watchers descended to earth. In their wake, what followed would plunge humanity into an age of chaos and corruption. But before we explore that story, we must return to Enoch, because according to the ancient text, Enoch was chosen for a special purpose. He would witness the secrets of heaven, and he would reveal the truth about what had happened to the world. One day, Enoch was approached by heavenly messengers. Angels appeared before him and commanded him to follow. They led him on a journey unlike anything any human had ever experienced. The Book of Enoch describes this journey in astonishing detail. Enoch was taken beyond the boundaries of the earth. He passed through layers of heaven. He witnessed cosmic structures that governed the movement of the sun and moon. He witnessed storehouses of snow and hail hidden within the heavens. He saw rivers of fire flowing beneath the throne of God. And he was shown something even more disturbing: the prison of the fallen angels. The watchers who had descended to earth had been judged, bound in chains, hidden deep within the earth until the final judgment of the world. But their actions had already caused irreversible damage. The knowledge they shared with humanity had spread across the earth. Weapons of war had been created. Sorcery and forbidden arts had become common. And from the unions between angels and women, giants had been born. These giants were known as the Nephilim, massive beings of incredible strength, creatures who would soon dominate the ancient world. As Enoch continued his journey through heaven, he was also shown visions of the future. He saw the destruction of the corrupted world through a great flood. He saw the rise and fall of kingdoms, and he saw the final judgment when evil would be removed from the earth forever. The angels instructed Enoch to write down everything he saw. These writings would become the Book of Enoch. But the story of this mysterious book does not end there, because centuries later it would vanish from most versions of the Bible. For thousands of years, the Book of Enoch survived only in a few remote places. One of those places was Ethiopia. High in the mountains of East Africa, ancient Christian communities preserved the text in the Ge'ez language. While the rest of the world forgot about the book, Ethiopian monks continued copying and protecting it. Then, in the 18th century, a Scottish explorer named James Bruce made an extraordinary discovery. While traveling through Ethiopia, Bruce obtained several copies of the Book of Enoch. When he returned to Europe and presented these manuscripts to scholars, many were skeptical. Some believed the book was a medieval forgery. But everything changed in 1947. In that year, a shepherd boy exploring caves near the Dead Sea discovered ancient scrolls hidden inside clay jars. These manuscripts became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among them were fragments of the Book of Enoch. These fragments proved something remarkable. The Book of Enoch had existed long before the time of Jesus. In fact, early Christian communities considered it an important religious text. Even more surprising, parts of the New Testament appear to reference the Book of Enoch. The Book of Jude includes a passage that closely matches a prophecy found in Enoch. This discovery raised a new question. If the Book of Enoch was known to early Christians, why was it eventually removed from the Bible? The answer lies in the complicated process of forming the biblical canon. During the first few centuries after the time of Jesus, Christian leaders debated which texts should be included in the official scriptures. Many writings circulated among early believers. Some were accepted, others were rejected. The Book of Enoch fell into the second category. Some Christian leaders believed its descriptions of angels, giants, and cosmic mysteries were too strange. Others feared that ordinary believers might misunderstand its teachings. Over time, the book gradually disappeared from most Christian traditions. Yet its influence never fully vanished. The ideas contained within Enoch continued to appear in ancient literature, mythology, and religious traditions. Stories of gods descending from heaven appear in many ancient cultures. Legends of giants can be found across the world, and nearly every ancient civilization contains some version of a great flood story. From Mesopotamia to Greece to the Americas, the same patterns appear again and again. Could these stories be echoes of a forgotten past? Could the events described in the Book of Enoch be based on ancient memories passed down through generations? The deeper we investigate the ancient world, the more mysterious the story becomes. And this is only the beginning, because the next part of the story reveals what happened when the Watchers descended to Earth, a moment that would unleash chaos upon humanity and begin the Age of Giants. Long before the Great Flood reshaped the world, the Earth existed in a very different state. Human civilization was still in its early stages. Small communities were scattered across fertile valleys and open plains. People lived simple lives, cultivating crops, raising animals, and building the first settlements that would eventually grow into cities. At night, the ancient world was illuminated by countless stars. Without modern lights, the sky appeared brighter than anything we can see today. The stars seemed alive, mysterious, almost watching. And according to ancient traditions, they truly were. Because far above the earth, in the heavenly realm, powerful beings were observing humanity. These beings were known as the Watchers. The Watchers were not ordinary angels. They were part of a special order assigned to observe the development of humanity. Their role was to watch the earth, record events, and maintain the balance between heaven and the physical world. For generations, they remained faithful to their mission. But over time, something began to change. As the Watchers observed humanity, they became fascinated by human life. They watched people laugh, love, struggle, and build families. Most of all, they noticed the daughters of men. Human women possessed a beauty and vitality that the angels had never experienced before. What began as curiosity slowly turned into desire. Desire grew stronger with each passing generation. Eventually, a group of 200 Watchers began to discuss something dangerous. They began to speak about descending to Earth. They spoke about taking human women as their wives. They spoke about sharing the secrets of heaven with humanity. Their leader was a powerful angel named Semjaza. Semjaza understood the consequences of such a decision. He knew that if they disobeyed the laws of heaven, they would face severe punishment. But the other angels insisted. Their desire had become too strong. So together, they made a pact. The place they chose was a remote and towering mountain in the ancient world, a mountain known as Mount Hermon. Rising high above the surrounding lands, Mount Hermon was covered in snow and surrounded by deep forests. Its isolated peak became the location of one of the most important moments in ancient history. According to the Book of Enoch, 200 Watchers gathered on the summit of that mountain. The night was cold. The wind moved across the frozen slopes. Above them, the stars shone brightly. The angels stood together in a circle. They knew the risk. If they descended to earth, they would never be able to return to their former glory. They would be rebels, fallen beings. Yet their desire pushed them forward. Semjaza spoke to the group. He warned them that if they carried out this plan, they would face terrible judgment. But the other angels responded with determination. They promised that none of them would abandon the others. They would share the same fate. So together, they made an oath. They bound themselves with a powerful vow. If one fell, all would fall together. That oath sealed their rebellion. From that moment forward, the Watchers were no longer simply observers. They had become participants in the destiny of the earth. Soon after they descended from heaven, to the people living in the valleys below, their arrival must have appeared astonishing. Brilliant beings descended from the sky. Their presence radiated power. Their knowledge seemed limitless. Many humans likely believed they were gods. At first, the Watchers appeared as teachers. They began sharing knowledge that humans had never possessed before. But the knowledge they revealed was not meant for mankind. One of the most infamous among them was Azazel. Azazel introduced humanity to the secrets of metalworking. Before this time, humans had only used simple tools made from stone, wood, and bone. Azazel taught them how to mine metals from the earth. He showed them how to melt ore in powerful furnaces. He taught them how to shape metal into tools. But the most dangerous invention was the weapon. Under Azazel's instruction, humans forged the first swords, spears, daggers, shields, armor designed for war. The sound of hammer striking metal echoed through ancient settlements. Fire glowed through the night as humans unknowingly stepped into a new age of violence. Other Watchers taught different forms of forbidden knowledge. Some revealed the secrets of sorcery. They taught humans how to mix herbs and potions. They taught enchantments and spells. These practices spread rapidly among early tribes. Another group introduced astrology. They taught humans how to observe the stars and interpret their movements as signs of future events. Others revealed knowledge about the movements of the sun and moon. Calendars were developed. Astronomical systems were created. Human civilization began advancing at a rapid pace. But not all of the teachings were harmless. Some Watchers focused their attention on women. They taught them the use of cosmetics and jewelry. They revealed techniques designed to increase beauty and seduction. Precious stones were polished. Rare minerals were used to create makeup. Adornment and vanity began to spread among human societies. These changes gradually transformed the ancient world. Before the arrival of the Watchers, humanity had lived relatively simple lives. But now new desires appeared. Greed began to grow. Power became a goal. Violence increased as weapons spread among tribes. And then the most shocking consequence of the Watchers' rebellion began to appear. The angels took human women as their wives. From these forbidden unions came children unlike anything the world had ever seen. At first, the births seemed miraculous, but it soon became clear that these children were not normal. They grew at extraordinary speeds. Within just a few years, they towered over ordinary humans. Their bodies were enormous, their strength unmatched. These beings became known as the Nephilim. Ancient descriptions portray them as giants of incredible size. Some traditions claim they stood more than 15 feet tall. Their presence transformed the balance of power in the ancient world. Wherever the giants lived, they quickly became rulers. Humans could not challenge their strength. Entire villages came under their control. At first, the giants were admired. Their size and power seemed almost divine. But admiration soon turned to fear, because the Nephilim possessed an insatiable hunger. They consumed massive amounts of food. Entire harvests disappeared. Herds of livestock vanished. Farmers could no longer produce enough to feed them. Soon, famine began spreading among ordinary humans. And when food became scarce, the giants began turning against humanity itself. Ancient accounts describe horrifying scenes. Villages destroyed. People hunted like animals. The world was descending into chaos. Violence spread across the earth.
Weapons created under Azazel's guidance were now used in brutal conflicts. Wars erupted between tribes. Bloodshed became common. The corruption of humanity reached a level never seen before. And from heaven, the archangels watched with horror. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel saw the destruction unfolding below. They heard the cries of suffering humanity. They saw how the fallen angels had corrupted the world. The earth itself, according to ancient writings, cried out for justice. The archangels brought these cries before the throne of God. Judgment was inevitable. But before that judgment arrived, one more chapter of this story would unfold. Because among the people living in that corrupted world was a man who remained faithful. A man who would receive a warning that could save humanity. His name was Noah. And the story of Noah would soon lead to one of the most catastrophic events in human history. A flood that would erase the world of the giants forever.
As the Watchers settled among humanity, the world began to change in ways no one had ever imagined. The knowledge they brought spread quickly across the ancient world. Communities that once lived peacefully began transforming into powerful and ambitious societies. Metal tools replaced stone tools. Weapons replaced farming instruments. Cities began to grow larger and stronger. But beneath this rapid progress, something darker was growing. The forbidden unions between the Watchers and human women had produced a new generation of beings. These children were the Nephilim. At first, their birth seemed miraculous. Villagers looked at them with amazement. Parents told stories about the children who grew faster and stronger than any human before them. But as the years passed, the truth became impossible to ignore. These children were not human. They were something else entirely. By the time they reached adulthood, many of them towered over ordinary people. Ancient descriptions suggest that some giants reached heights of more than 15 feet. Their bodies were powerful and heavily built. Their strength allowed them to perform feats that seemed impossible. They could lift massive stones, break trees with their bare hands, and crush enemies with ease. Wherever they lived, humans quickly realized they could not challenge them. Entire villages fell under the control of these giants. At first, the Nephilim behaved like rulers. People served them out of fear. Farmers were forced to provide food. Builders were forced to construct homes and strongholds for the giants. But the Nephilim had one weakness: their hunger. Because of their enormous size, they required enormous amounts of food. Fields that once fed hundreds of people could barely feed a single giant. Harvest after harvest was consumed. Livestock herds disappeared. Soon, entire regions began facing famine. The suffering of ordinary humans grew worse with each passing year. At first, the giants hunted animals to satisfy their hunger. Massive beasts were slaughtered in huge numbers. But eventually, even the animals became scarce. And when the food supply collapsed, the giants began turning against humanity itself. Ancient texts describe horrifying scenes. Villages destroyed. People hunted like prey. The Nephilim, once admired for their strength, became symbols of terror. Violence spread across the earth. Tribes armed with metal weapons fought brutal wars against one another. Powerful giants often led these armies. Their presence on the battlefield made them nearly unstoppable. Entire cities were conquered. Civilizations rose and fell under their influence. The world had entered an age of chaos. According to the Book of Enoch, the corruption extended beyond simple violence. The Watchers continued sharing forbidden knowledge. Humans learned new forms of sorcery. Strange rituals appeared in ancient cultures.
Many people began worshiping the giants as gods. Statues were built. Temples were raised in their honor. The original order of creation had been completely distorted. The earth itself seemed to suffer under the weight of this corruption. Forests were destroyed. Animals were hunted to extinction. Wars left entire landscapes burned and barren. The Book of Enoch describes the earth as crying out for justice, and the cries did not go unheard. High above the chaos of the earth, the archangels watched everything. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. These powerful angels saw the suffering that humanity was experiencing. They saw how the Watchers had abandoned their divine mission. They saw how the giants had turned the world into a place of violence and terror. The archangels brought these observations before the throne of God. According to the ancient text, they spoke together, saying that the earth had become filled with blood. They described how the Watchers had revealed secrets that were never meant for mankind. They described how the giants had destroyed entire civilizations. The response from heaven was decisive. Judgment would come. The fallen angels would be punished, and the corruption of the earth would be removed. One of the first targets of this judgment was Azazel, because Azazel had been responsible for teaching humanity the art of warfare. The archangel Raphael received the command to capture him. According to the Book of Enoch, Azazel was seized and bound in chains. He was thrown into a deep pit in the desert. Sharp rocks covered the opening, sealing him inside. There he would remain imprisoned until the final judgment at the end of time. Other Watchers faced similar punishment. They were bound and imprisoned beneath the earth, hidden away in dark places where they could no longer influence humanity. But even with the fallen angels imprisoned, the problem of the giants remained. The Nephilim still walked the earth. Their hunger and violence continued destroying human civilization. The corruption had spread so deeply that the world itself had become unstable. At this moment in history, only one man remained truly righteous. His name was Noah. Unlike the rest of humanity, Noah had not embraced the corruption spreading across the earth. He remained faithful. He refused to follow the violent path that others had chosen. According to ancient tradition, Noah lived quietly with his family while the rest of the world descended into chaos. But Noah would soon receive a message that would change everything. Because the judgment coming upon the earth would not stop with the fallen angels. It would reshape the entire world. A flood was coming. A flood so powerful that it would erase the civilization of the giants forever. But before that flood arrived, Noah would be given a task unlike any other. A task that would determine the survival of humanity itself. He would be commanded to build a massive vessel, a structure large enough to preserve life during the destruction that was about to come. The Ark. And the story of the Ark would become one of the most famous events in human history. But few people realize that according to ancient tradition, the flood was not only meant to punish human wickedness, it was meant to cleanse the earth from the corruption created by the Watchers and the giants. The world had been altered, and now it had to be restored. The storm that followed would become one of the most catastrophic events ever described in ancient texts. A flood that would reshape continents, destroy civilizations, and leave behind only a single family to rebuild the world. The age of the Nephilim was about to end, but their legacy would never fully disappear, because their legacy would continue to echo throughout history. Legends of giants would appear in cultures across the world. Stories of ancient heroes fighting monstrous beings would spread through mythology, and some would claim that traces of the giants survived even after the flood. But that is a story for another chapter, because before we can understand what happened after the flood, we must witness the event itself, the moment when the sky opened, the moment when the oceans rose, the moment when the world drowned, and the ark became the only refuge for life on earth.
As the corruption of the earth reached its peak, the heavens prepared for judgment. The world had changed. Violence filled every land. Kingdoms fought endless wars. The giants ruled with cruelty and hunger. Humanity had become trapped in a cycle of destruction. But among millions of people, one man still walked a different path. His name was Noah. According to ancient tradition, Noah was a man of integrity. While others embraced violence and corruption, Noah remained faithful to God. He lived quietly with his family. But one night, everything changed. A message came from heaven. God revealed to Noah that the world would soon face a great judgment. A flood unlike anything in history would cover the earth. The purpose of this flood was not only to punish human wickedness. It was meant to remove the corruption caused by the fallen angels and the giants. But Noah and his family would be spared. God gave Noah an extraordinary command. He was told to build a massive structure, a vessel large enough to survive the coming destruction. The ark. For years, Noah worked on the ark. Many people mocked him. They laughed at the idea that the world could be destroyed by water. But Noah continued building. Slowly, the massive structure began taking shape. The ark was enormous. It was designed to carry animals from across the earth. Pairs of creatures would enter the ark: birds, beasts, and livestock. Life itself would be preserved inside this floating sanctuary. Meanwhile, outside the ark, the world continued its descent into chaos. The giants still ruled with brutal force. Wars continued across the lands. Few people paid attention to the strange vessel being built, until the day the sky changed. Dark clouds gathered across the horizon. Thunder rolled across the heavens. And then it began. Rain. At first, it seemed ordinary, but the rain did not stop. Hour after hour, the storm grew stronger. Ancient texts describe another terrifying event. The fountains of the deep burst open. Massive underground waters erupted from beneath the earth. Oceans surged across the land. Rivers overflowed their banks. Cities were swallowed by rising waters. Mountains disappeared beneath waves. The giants tried to escape, but their strength could not save them. Their strength could not fight the ocean. One by one, they were overwhelmed by the flood. Entire civilizations vanished beneath the water. The ark floated above the destruction. Inside, Noah and his family listened to the roar of the storm outside. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain continued. The world was completely submerged. When the storm finally ended, silence covered the earth. The age of the giants was over. But according to the book of Enoch, the story did not end there. Because when the bodies of the Nephilim died, something else remained: their spirits. And those spirits would become something far more dangerous. The spirits of the giants. When the floodwaters destroyed the Nephilim, their physical bodies disappeared. But the book of Enoch described something strange. The giants were not entirely human. They were the children of angels and humans. Because of this unnatural origin, their spirits could not simply pass away like ordinary souls. Instead, their spirits remained on the earth. These spirits became wandering entities, invisible, restless, and filled with anger. According to the book of Enoch, these spirits became what we now call demons. They wandered across the world, unable to return to heaven, unable to rest in peace. Their existence became one of endless frustration.
Because they had once ruled the earth, they had once possessed enormous strength and power. Now they were trapped as invisible spirits. But even without bodies, they could still influence humanity. They whispered into human minds. They encouraged violence, tempted people toward corruption, and slowly their influence began spreading across civilizations once again. Many ancient cultures told stories about evil spirits that haunted the world, creatures that could manipulate human behavior, entities that thrived on chaos and fear. The Book of Enoch claims that these spirits were actually the remnants of the Nephilim destroyed in the flood. Meanwhile, the fallen angels who created the giants remained imprisoned beneath the earth, bound in darkness, waiting for the final judgment. But their legacy continued through the spirits of their children. This idea shocked many religious leaders because it offered a completely different explanation for the origin of demons. Instead of fallen angels, demons were described as the restless spirits of the Nephilim. This teaching was controversial, and many scholars believe this was one of the reasons why the Book of Enoch was eventually removed from the biblical canon. Yet the influence of Enoch never completely disappeared. Fragments of the book were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Ancient Jewish communities preserved its teachings for centuries, and some early Christian writers still referenced it in their works. Even the New Testament contains a surprising connection. The book of Jude directly quotes a prophecy from Enoch, which means that at least some early Christians were familiar with the text. Despite this, the Book of Enoch slowly faded from mainstream religious tradition, except in one place, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. To this day, the Ethiopian Bible still includes the Book of Enoch as sacred scripture. For them, the story of the Watchers, the giants, and the flood remains an important part of biblical history. But for most of the world, the book became a forgotten mystery, a hidden chapter of ancient religious tradition, a story that raises many questions. What really happened before the flood? Did giants truly exist? And why was the Book of Enoch removed from most versions of the Bible? These questions continue to fascinate historians, theologians, and researchers today. Because the story of Enoch is more than just an ancient legend. It is a glimpse into how early civilizations understood the relationship between heaven, earth, and humanity. And perhaps the greatest mystery of all is this: what other ancient knowledge has been lost to history?